Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So we are 6 cards away from completing the collection log. Our last card was Quake. I tried to make a good Quake deck list. There's some cool interaction with Quake and Kingpin. There's some cool interactions with Quake and Storm. But it was so inconsistent that I wasn't able to get one that just really felt good enough to showcase. And so it is one of the rare cards that I am going to skip and bypass and not highlight in a deck list, at least for now. I'll keep brainstorming and try to come back to it at some point. But right now it's just not one that we can showcase. And so we should be able to pull a new card today. We were in the bottom 6 cards. Our top 3 most wanted cards at this point are Wong, Gambit, and Mystique. And all 3 are in the bottom 6 cards from our collection. So we do have some pretty good cards left to pull. But before we jump into that, as we near the end of the collection log, I'm going to start doing user requested deck lists. So if you have a deck list that you want me to showcase, that you want me to run, leave it in a comment below in this video. The one that gets the most thumbs up, the most likes, is the one that I will run in next week's video. So if you have a really good Thor deck, or even if you just theory crafted a deck and you want to see it tested out, if you throw the deck list in a comment down below, whichever one gets the most likes is the one that I will run. And as always, thank you guys for just showing up to enjoy the content and support the channel. All right, we are going to go ahead and start pulling our collector's reserves. We have boosters, which okay, and then we have Dagger. So Dagger being another move-related card, similar to Human Torch, kind of similar to Kraven as well. Dagger, when this moves to a location, +2 power for each card your opponent has there. So we're going to be able to use this alongside like a cloak to get some kind of cheeky movement. It's going to discourage the opponent from moving their cards there because they know that we have a Dagger on the board, and it makes it really hard for them to capitalize on that cloak movement like they normally would. And so I know that I normally shy away from Heim. You guys are just gonna let me have my Quake list up on the screen and not say anything. Okay, so I know that I normally shy away from Heimdall, but I think with this and Human Torch, it might be worthwhile to include in as a last minute, late game push to push some cards over, get that last minute buff. I am going to go ahead and jump into a deck build. I'm wondering if I should do like a semi-movement deck where we have some high power cards, but we also have some cards like Cloak, Kraven, and Dagger to kind of capitalize on some non-movement type mechanics. But I am going to jump over into the deck draft and I will be right back. All right, so we ended up drafting a movement style deck, and this one looks quite a bit different than the last couple of movement decks that we've ran. So we decided to fully lean in and commit to the movement archetype. And so that means we dropped things like Chavez, we added in things like Heimdall. We did go ahead and drop our Falcon. We left in Beast though, that way we can still pull things in either from the left or the middle to clear up room for that last turn Heimdall shift, and so that we have some cheap movement cards. So we can always pull Cloak back in, we can pull it back in on turn 3, drop it again on turn 4, or pull it in on 3, drop it on 5. That way we can make some pretty big movement and then still have the option to shift it with Heimdall. It's going to add a lot of confusion, a lot of extra movement components into the deck list. So let's go ahead and run through it really quickly. It is a very standard movement style deck list. We have Human Torch, which is one of the bigger movement type cards that gets a bonus from being moved around. Now this one has a really big chance to high roll, but it's less consistent than something like your Kraven, your Vulture, or even your Multiple Man. We have our new Dagger, which when this moves to a location, +2 power for each card your opponent has there. So this can get pretty large pretty quickly if you move it a few times. It makes them think twice about moving cards into the cloaked lane whenever you drop a cloak. It adds a little bit more inconsistency or question to whether your opponent should move their cards or not, rather than them just getting a free way to relocate their cards. We have Kraven, who when a card moves here, this gets +2 power. So this includes if he's pushed over, he will count himself as a card that's moved there, as well as anything that moves with him. He has some really high potential after he was buffed up from his original state. And then we did add Multiple Man. So Multiple Man is typically something that we shy away from running because it tends to clog up your board with a lot of low power cards. But if we can hit this with something like a Hulkbuster, or even if we just duplicate it once or twice, that can add a decent amount of board presence. We can always pull it back in with our Beast to clear up space for it to be shifted and move around as well. And then we have Vulture, who every time this card moves, he's going to get +5 power. he can get really large really quickly. And then we have the support cards for our movement cards. So we have Iron Fist. This is a cheap way to push cards over. If we pull it back in with Beast, this becomes a 0 cost card, and so you can do a lot of cool things with this interaction. If we pull back in Iron Fist and Human Torch with Beast, we can then drop both of them on turn 6 alongside our Heimdall to do a double Human Torch shift in that last turn. We have Cloak, which is going to allow both players to move cards to that location on the following turn, but with us having cards like Kraven and Dagger on the board, it's going to make it where they don't really want to utilize this effect, so we get the entire upside from it. We have Doctor Strange, who is going to move our highest power cards to that location. He can really help snowball either a Dagger, a Human Torch, a Vulture, a Kraven, a Multiple Man. We can get a lot of good upside from having our Doctor Strange in this movement deck. We have Hulkbuster, who is going to merge with a friendly card at this location. Since we have so many good options for our movement mechanisms, Hulkbuster now has more than just one target. Before, we really wanted to hit Human Torch with it to hit that high roll, but now if we hit Dagger, if we hit Multiple Man, if we hit even Vulture or Kraven, they're all really good targets. And so we're going to be able to use Hulkbuster a lot more consistently without the fear of it attaching to something that's a little subpar. We have Iron Man as a late game drop as a way to extend our power level in any of the lanes. And then of course we have the card that we typically avoid in Heimdall. I figured now is as good a time as any to come back to this card and try it again. I have not given him a great chance, and so I think it's time he gets his redemption chance. And so with that out of the way, we are going to go ahead and jump into a few games. I think this movement deck list is going to be a lot more consistent than our high roll attempts from before. I think this is just going to be a good power push across the board to give us quite a bit of good upside. All right, so next up we have Jamim, and in our starting hand we have our Dagger, our Kraven, we have our Cloak, and our Doctor Strange. So we have a decent means to kind of drop some power onto the board and then move them around, or at least, and then we get a Human Torch as well. It's just depending on what order do we want to drop them in, because we want Dagger to move when there's a lot of cards. And so with New York being a location, we can very well take turn 6 and not drop Heimdall here, but it's just a matter of where do we drop our cards. So I think I'm going to drop Kraven first and then kind of see what they drop, which they don't drop anything yet. Okay, and then in Dark Dimension, cards are not going to be revealed until the game ends. So we can always hide like a Doctor Strange there. I kind of like that. We can hide a Doctor Strange there. That way we pull back in like a really high power, either Dagger or Kraven or Torch, and it's going to get buffed up further. I like the idea of that. I don't know that that's like the best in terms of like in practice. I don't know that that's the best, but that is how we are going to play it here. And so we're going to go ahead and merge Hulkbuster with our Human Torch to kind of start a pretty good snowball. Next turn we'll be able to drop our Cloak and our Dagger to increase the possibilities of where we can move to 2 spots instead of just 1. Okay, and so then they use a Jubilee, which pulls into Lockjaw, which always feels great, but then it pulls into Adam Warlock, which luckily we are ahead in this lane, and so we are going to be able to do something like a Vulture and a Cloak. And so then we are going to pull our Human Torch this way on turn 6. We're going to pull our Kraven and our Vulture this way, and then one of them will get pulled back with our Doctor Strange. This is the strangest the strangest movement game I think I've ever had. Okay, and so they do have a Mr. Negative here, so they have some pretty good potential. Okay, so this would make it 12, moving this, and this. I think 12 is going to be our highest power card. Oh man. So I think 12 would have been our highest power card. And so that would have got pulled over. It would have become 24 in this lane. We could have then dropped our Iron Man here, which would have made this one, that would have made this one like 40 power. We would have had a massive power streak, because Kraven would have been around 10, I believe. Vulture would have been 8, Cloak would have been 6, and then we would have doubled all of that. All right, so next up we have Hide Toe in a bracket. And so in our starting hand, we do have our Human Torch here. We also have Hulkbuster. So I think we may want to risk it here. This would allow us to kind of snowball early Then we could pull it with Doctor Strange. We could do whatever other, and then Danger Room. So not a lot of great, these first two locations are not great for us. As long as this last one's not incredibly bad, like the Space Throne or something similar. When they get our cloak, they use a Rocket Raccoon, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt us. We do get our beast, so we're going to be able to pull back in the Human Torch. It's going to be able to be a free Human Torch, and so maybe we can do something like an Iron Forge and then drop a Vulture here. It pushes it over. We can follow that up with a beast to pull these back in, and then get a free push again is the ideal play line here. And so we are going to go ahead and merge Hulkbuster with our Human Torch to make a 6 power Human Torch. We're going to be able to then, and we draw 2 cards here. So we have a lot of resources. everything but our Iron Fist. So do we Doctor Strange here? No, I don't think we do. Or maybe we need to? We don't have any of our move engines or ways to make that movement stick. So next turn we have a 50% chance of drawing into Iron Man, a 50% chance of drawing into our Iron Fist. And so we may be able to still do that play line. Yeah, I think we go ahead and move it. We're going to take the risk here. And so we are going to drop our Doctor Strange. It will pull in our Human Torch. It shouldn't have any issues. The Human Torch shouldn't. Doctor Strange may get killed, but that's okay. Poor Doctor Strange. Never saw it coming. And so then they have Elektra, which would have killed our Human Torch, but we turned first. And so we got lucky. Oh, but we don't get lucky in the 50-50 coin flip. Okay, so now we need to figure out how to win anyways, because we didn't get lucky in the coin flip to get our Iron Fist. So do we start stacking out our movement cards? This would allow us to drop a Heimdall next turn either here or here to push cards over. This is going to be a 24 power Human Torch. I think we should have this one locked down. This would give us a decent amount of power. I think that's the play we want to go with because we don't have any great move tools just yet because our cloak and our Iron Fist, our cloak got destroyed and our Iron Fist was at the bottom of our deck list. And so 14 power here would be what we would need to beat. Ooh, and their Ant-Man gets destroyed. And so I think we take the risk of, and then there's our poor Iron Fist. So I think we take the risk here and drop our Heimdall, because if not, this becomes 8. This becomes 2. Does it become 10? Does Craven become 10 in this scenario? If so, then we're going to have a 20-something power lane. And I think we have a really good shot just because Craven is so large. Can they beat 24 power though? And then they're going to lose 3 power overall once the turn ends. I don't think they have enough power push to do that. And so, yeah, whenever Human Torch gets pushed over, it's going to be 24 power. That last late game big push in Heimdall is coming in handy here. And so let's see if Heimdall sticks. He does. Craven becomes only 4. Oh, so Craven only buffed up from what got moved, of course. So Craven is, when a card moves here, this gets +2 power. And so he didn't count himself, but he counted Vulture as a card moved there. And since nothing here moved, we were able to pull this one out with the help of our Heimdall. I may have been too harsh on you, my friend. We had a 38% win rate with him for a while, but he is coming in absolutely massive in this new move deck list. All right, so next up we have Zardad, and the first location is Nidavellir. We do have both Iron Fist and Human Torch. I guess all 3. We have Iron Fist, Human Torch, and Hulkbuster. So I think what we're going to do is drop our Human Torch here. Next turn, we will probably only drop Iron Fist, and we'll drop Iron Fist into Nidavellir. That will allow us to Hulkbuster on turn 3, and then move Human Torch immediately. We can then pull Human Torch with our Doctor Strange to then double it again. That's going to be 24 power. We're going to be able to get it up to 48 if we have a Heimdall, and if not, if we get a cloak or a cloak and a Heimdall, we can potentially get it up to 96. That could be a massive Human Torch. I think we may just let that, and then if we can pull Iron Fist back in with a Beast, these will be free. We can drop both into Kamartage, and it's going to push it twice. Such a high roll potential game. I hope that the heart of the cards are with us. I hope that we just pull the perfect set here. We are going to go with the regular play line, and we may lose the other 2 lanes, but if we can have a 200 power Human Torch, you better believe we're going to do it. So we're going to merge with our Hulkbuster. That is going to push it this turn. He's going to be 12 power, plus the 5 power from Nidavellir. If this is an Electra, we may cry. It's a Deadpool. Okay, so they're running a destruction. Oh no. So they're running a destruction deck. We have initiative. Let's go ahead and try to protect our upside. We're going to pull our Human Torch here, because Deadpool decks will run a Killmonger. We do not want our Human Torch destroyed. That would destroy us. So we're going to go ahead, since we have initiative, we're going to pull our Human Torch over. We hope that this is the Killmonger and not like a Carnage. We will see. Okay, so we have the biggest threat out of the way, because we were able to pull our Human Torch over and protect it in Wakanda. So we do not have our Iron Fist anymore, but at least we have our Human Torch protected. Oh my gosh, the up rolls. Okay, so now, do we pull them back in? Do we just drop an Iron Man? We could always drop an Iron Man into Nidavellir. Then we probably wouldn't need to move cards next turn. We could always pull Human Torch in, drop him here. If we draw into Heimdall, which is a 25% chance, he would move over here. He would absolutely win this lane. But I think we play this as if we do not draw into our Heimdall here. So we could always pull into our Doctor Strange, but we need power in another lane. I think 27 is going to be enough for us. And so we're just going to go ahead and drop our Iron Man. It looks like they invest quite a few resources into Kamar Taj, potentially thinking that we're going to shift all of our cards over. And then it does get the Deathlock, so it destroys their Deadpool. He becomes 8 power. They fill up a lot of their lanes or locations with squirrels. And so maybe they have a death. This isn't great. This is definitely not great. But I think it's the best that we have. We're going to drop our low power cards into Nidavellir, which will allow our Iron Man to duplicate their power. I don't think they will be able to come up over us in Wakanda. I anticipate a Deadpool here, which would be another 8, so it'd be 29 plus 5 would be 34. So this is going to be 5, 10, 15, 20, 40 just off of the Nidavellir location. If they can change this location, maybe they win. But this is our absolute best chance to win, and our best chance at having an upside. And so they do drop the Deadpool. It is not enough to win them Wakanda. They drop Taskmaster into Kamar Taj. So they should have dropped their Deadpool into Nidavellir. I mean, if they were wanting more power for the best chance to win. Had they dropped Deadpool into Nidavellir, Taskmaster would have copied the +5 version of Deadpool, and so it would have copied 13 power instead of 8. But either way, even 16 power here wasn't quite enough to push over our massive Human Torch that we so very fortunate that we had Doctor Strange and that we were able to make that informed drop to move it instead of trying to go for the high roll and wait for the beast to come in. It absolutely saved this game for us. All right, and so next up we have Taiga. And in our starting hand, we have Iron Fist, we have Beast, so we're going to be able to push a card over. We're going to be able to pull it back in to have a discounted Iron Fist and whatever else. We're not going to push it over into Murder World because we don't want them to get destroyed. So we're going to go with putting Iron Fist into the unknown here. And that will allow us to next turn drop a Dagger, drop a Multiple Man, or we can wait one turn, we can drop a Vulture. I'm going to go ahead and go with the Multiple Man just so we can get some board presence all across the board. This is going to allow us to have 2 Multiple Men. We can pull them back in with our Beast if we want to. We can also just opt to... that would have been really good for our Multiple Man. And we had thought about waiting so that we could drop Vulture and get hit with Iron Fist instead. So with our energy level, it makes sense to do something like Vulture, but at the same time, I do want to pull our cards back in. That's going to allow us to drop our Iron Fist again. We can always drop Vulture, which will get pushed over, or we could drop Multiple Man again, which will get pushed over, and then we can drop Cloak on the following turn. I'm going to go ahead and go with this. I don't think we wait. I think the biggest issue we run into is holding our resources for too long with a deck list like this. And so we're going to be able to drop our Iron Fist, we can drop our Vulture, and we can actually drop our Multiple Man as well. Do we want to, though? That will allow our Multiple Man to get buffed up here. We can drop a Cloak on turn 5, as well as Doctor Strange to pull one of our cards over, so like Vulture. I like it. Okay, so we're going to go with that. They do drop a card into the Embassy. Typically, move decks are notoriously weak in the right lane, but if we can... Ooh, and so they have Dracula. So what are they running? They haven't really dropped much. And so here we are going to go ahead and play Cloak. Do we play Cloak and Doctor Strange? I think maybe we do. Doctor Strange is going to pull Vulture over. He's going to become 15 power. We will next turn be able to move our Multiple Men if we want to. This one being 5 power, this one being 3. I don't think we necessarily need Dagger in this scenario. They will be able to adjust their power level, but they know that we're going to be able to adjust ours as well. And so it becomes pretty difficult to kind of read where our ultimate end goal or in-game goal is. And so they have a 7 power blade and a 7 power, or I guess now a 9 power blade because of Wakanda Embassy and because of Nakia. We do draw into Heimdall. Interesting. So we can always do some... Is it better for us to drop, maybe do something like a Vulture, Multiple Man, and then Iron Man? That's going to be 10, 15, so it's going to be 30 power here. It's going to be 20, 25. That's a lot of power. And so even if they shift their cards around, we have power kind of spread throughout on the board. We will have 6 here, quite a bit here. I think that's better than a Heimdall shift for this last turn. So they opt to not move their cards around. Depending on what they dropped into Stark Tower, we have a really good shot at sneaking this away with 30 power. They just drop a Swarm and a Gambit. If that hits our Iron Man, okay. They almost came up and won in Stark Tower anyways, even with, oh my gosh, even with us having Iron Man, the Gambit not hitting anything in our lane. Had it hit any of those 4, so it had a 40% chance at winning then the game there. Gambit is just so crazy and can be so polarizing to a game. We got very, very fortunate that Gambit hit a target here, and even if it had hit a target here, it would have been fine. But anything here would have lost us the game. Just so very, very close. All right, so next up we have, and I don't know how you would technically pronounce it, but I think it's a play on Cthulhu. So we're going to assume that. But our first turn, we don't have any of our cards. We do have a Multiple Man and a Hulkbuster, which is going to be pretty nice here. X-Mansion is kind of unfortunate because it can swing the game so drastically. But I think we're going to do our Multiple Man in mid. Then we'll do our Hulkbuster, which will grab onto Multiple Man. As long as it's not something that eats the lane, like a Carnage or a Destroyer or something just massive, then we should be okay having it here. And then the Vault. So on turn 6, cards are not going to be able to be played into the Vault. So we're going to be able to merge here. Next turn, we can do an Iron Fist and a Vulture to push our card over, get that initial boost on Vulture. And then it does merge. So we have a 7 power Multiple Man that we're going to be able to move across the board. We know that we're at least going to duplicate him once. Most likely with our Heimdall. Ooh, we get a Morph, which morphs into an Iron Man, which is so fantastic. And then... So that is a snap as fast as we can type of moment. So they dropped a Nakia to buff up the cards that they had in their hand. They then drew into a crystal, which shuffled their buffed up hand back into their deck. Then they drew 3 new cards. So just very unfortunate for them. But I think we go with an Iron Fist and a Vulture here. Next turn, I say that we just drop an Iron Man here. That way, On turn 6, when we drop our Heimdall, it is going to shift it over, and it we'll have the duplicated power in Wakanda, and we'll have the duplicated power in the X Mansion, and we should have quite a bit of upside. Oof. And then so we don't have the upside in this Iron Man, but we should get a decent amount of upside whenever we push the cards over. And so maybe instead of Iron Man here, do we go with something like a Doctor Strange, or a Kraven, and then a Doctor Strange? So then when we can drop Heimdall here, really depends on what they're running. So this would end up pulling in our Vulture. We could either opt to not drop Heimdall next turn, depending on what they drop, or we can shift our cards if we need to. We can either do a new Iron Man, and we know that we have their power level beat currently in this lane. So if we just do an Iron Man next turn, that's 18. So I think we have a really good shot here, depending on what they drop into the vault. If we Heimdall shift, that gives us a good upside here. If we don't, we have a good upside here. So they drop a Red Skull, so we know that they do. Oof. So they could have a Taskmaster here, thinking that we're going to shift cards over, but we're not. We're just going to keep them as is, unless they can buff up this lane. And Iron Man's not something you typically see in a lot of movement decks, but it allows some flexibility for us. So we're going to just drop our Iron Man here. They can only drop here, which I anticipate a Taskmaster to copy the Red Skull's power level. No, it's a magic. Oh my gosh, they magicked us. And so cards can now be played into the vault again. Okay, okay. So cards at that point would be able to be played into the vault again. If we did a Heimdall here, it would shift these 3 over, or a Heimdall here, it would shift these 3 over. We could have a pretty good upside here. We could get a lot of upside in our Kraven, moving 4 cards at once. Our Vulture would be huge. I think no matter how you laid it, even with being able to drop resources here, it was not going to happen. The X Mansion was very unfortunate, but we also had a pretty good play line in our movement cards, and we had some pretty good cards overall. And so with that last win out of the way, I am going to go ahead and end the video here. Now, I know that our Dagger did not get huge this game. She offers a lot of board presence, but with how many movement cards we had in this deck list, we just had so many options to do so many cool things that we didn't ever really absolutely need to play Dagger, but just knowing that we had Dagger that we could drop and push for us was threat enough. It gave us another avenue to play our cards, and that's the key to being able to be consistent, is not relying on one particular combo. So like Human Torch, Hulkbuster. If we don't draw into those, is that going to tank our game? For the high roll games, yes, but with so many other movement cards and that Heimdall at the end and the flexibility of being able to decide if we do it or not, I do enjoy having that back in, because we can decide if we want to shift, if we don't want to shift. We can decide exactly what we want to do, and Iron Man kind of allows us that flexibility. So we can drop Iron Man to propel one lane's power level, or we can drop Heimdall if we need to shift instead. But just overall, this deck list feels so incredibly fun. I highly encourage, if you're deep into pool 3 and you have all of these movement cards, I encourage giving it a shot. I am often very quick to write off movement as an archetype, just because it's so hard. It can be so clunky. With all of these resources that we have now at our disposal, it has felt much more consistent. It's not as high roll where you're not aiming for 96 power Human Torches every single time. You're aiming for 15 power Vultures, 7 power Multiple Men, 10 power Kravens and Daggers, some middle of the line power levels, but they're only 2 power drops, 3 power drops, and you can get them to the power level of a 6 drop card. If you can get all of them up to that level, then your whole board presence is massive. You can compete with a lot of the higher power deck lists. I am going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you have a deck list that you do want to suggest, this is the first video where I'm taking deck list suggestions, so leave the deck list in the comment section down below, or if you just want to see what other people have left, go ahead and check out the comment section. If you see the one that you like, give it a thumbs up, the one that has the most likes. By next week, whenever we are making our user suggested deck list video, we will use that one. We will run it through, good or bad, we will give it a test. So if you want to troll, give me all 1-drop cards and then have a whole bunch of your friends upvote it just to see me agonize and struggle. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave it a like, leave it a comment. I am going to go ahead and end the video here. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.